It was raining frogs. People were getting drenched in amphibians, and then some of those frogs started to die. This is the story of the deadly rain that turned into frogs. There are a lot of strange things that have been reported falling from the sky throughout history. There was a time when it literally rained frogs in France. And no, this isn't some weird April Fool's joke. It happened back in 1794, and according to some pretty reputable sources, thousands upon thousands of frogs just fell from the sky over a wide area in western France. Some reports say that they rained down for 3 straight days, covering the ground and even people's heads in frogs. The frogs were said to be around 3 inches long and completely drenched, which made it hard to tell if they were alive or dead. Since there were so many of them, they just sort of piled up on top of one another, making a thick carpet of frogs on the ground. People were astounded by the spectacle, though some were also confused as to how so many frogs could fall from the sky all at once. Was it some kind of mass suicide? Had they all been poisoned? Or maybe it was something more sinister, like an alien invasion. After all, aliens do love their frogs. Just ask David Icke. Of course, we now know that none of these were true. But what really happened? Well, the answer is a bit boring, but also kind of cool. You see, back in the late 18th century, there weren't really any cars on the road or airplanes in the sky, so frogs could safely make their way around the countryside by hopping along the riverbanks. However, the humans of the time had a nasty habit of building their houses right next to those riverbanks. So inevitably, when a frog hopped a little too far from home, it would end up getting nabbed by a hungry cat. To avoid losing their dinner, people would often throw the cats and their froggy prizes into the river. And this is where things get interesting. See, when a frog is thrown into a body of water, its instinct is to try and find higher ground. So it swims to the surface and climbs onto whatever boat or leaf or twig it can find. Sometimes these makeshift rafts will float for quite a while, but eventually they get wet and soggy and sink, at which point the frogs inside become trapped underwater. If this happens during a particularly hot summer, the frogs can cook to death inside their little floating prison. However, if it rains, the dead frogs can be washed out of their watery grave and deposited all over the surrounding area. Voila! You've got yourself an amphibious apocalypse. Now, while this may explain how frogs could have possibly fallen from the sky, it doesn't really explain why they only fell for 3 days. Well, unfortunately, that part of the story is a bit of a mystery. But whatever the reason, after 3 days of froggy rain, the skies cleared and the frogs stopped falling. As for the frogs that were still alive, well, they probably headed back to the river, shaken but not stirred. This is the host with this channel. And until next time, remember, don't look up.